The ARPG genre is one of my favorites. There's something so satisfying about killing hordes of enemies in the pursuit of better gear. The feeling of finding that ultra rare item that will completely change the way my build works, and the soul-crushing defeat I feel when I lose another hardcore character. ARPGs tend to be less about the story and more about the action. They give you the tools to make any type of character you want, and then they set you loose. In this video, I'll discuss the most prominent titles in the genre while giving my opinion on the games and showing you their Steam rating so you know exactly which ones to try and which ones to avoid. If you have a favorite ARPG, let the viewers know down in the comments below which one's your favorite and why. Now, let's begin. First up, Warhammer 40k, Inquisitor Martyr, 2018 on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr. Wow, that's a mouthful. Inquisitor Martyr begins with the discovery of an abandoned ship, seemingly appearing out of nowhere in the Caligar sector. The player is asked to investigate the ghost ship, and in doing so, you discover this is a battleship that disappeared 5,000 years ago, and things on board haven't gone so well. It kind of reminds me of the atmosphere in the movie Event Horizon or in the video game Dead Space. Warhammer differentiates itself from the rest of the games in the genre with its pacing. There are fewer enemies with more health, positioning matters in each fight. This is completely contrary to the direction the rest of the genre has moved toward, where you're ultimately clearing screens of enemies in rapid succession. One of the first things I notice about this game is that it's gorgeous, in a creepy horror movie kind of way, and it really feels like you're roaming around a ghost ship. It also does not shy away from gore one bit. It features multiple different classes, like a caster or a sniper, each with many different loadouts. It's been well reviewed, sitting at mostly positive on Steam, both recently and since its release. If you've craved a space ARPG or you're a fan of the Warhammer universe, this is absolutely an ARPG worth checking out. The Ascent, 2021, PC and Xbox. This is another unique take on the RPG genre. The Ascent is a cyberpunk-themed game developed by Neon Giant. It was developed in UE4 by a team of 12 people. Now, this doesn't mean that they weren't experienced, as the developer said they've worked on games like Gears of War, Far Cry 3, and Doom. The game looks gorgeous, and it's ripe with cyberpunk vibes. Even the cities you wander through feel incredibly populated. It's going to remind you a lot of Blade Runner or Altered Carbon in all the best ways. The story is solid enough for an ARPG, and it even has some side quests to push you to the edges of the map. The game doesn't let you customize your build quite as much as some of the other options on this list do, but what it does do, it does really well. The game has mostly positive Steam reviews, both recently and since its release, and could be a great option if you're looking for a looter shooter to play. Last Epoch, Early Access, PC, Linux, and macOS. Last Epoch just entered Early Access in April of 2019. Wait, 2019? It's been 3 years of early access already? But is it still being worked on? Yes, absolutely. It seems the game's developers are still working hard to improve the game, so what is it? Last Epoch is a time travel ARPG where you will face dark empires, wrathful gods, and untouched wilds to find a way to save Viterra and time itself from the void. It's a Kickstarter-funded game being developed by 11th Hour Games, and it seems to be doing well. One of the more unique features is that every skill has its own skill tree that allows you to modify that skill to your liking. If you wanted to like Path of Exile but you didn't because it was too confusing, Last Epoch might be the perfect option for you. The game features dungeons, replayable maps, and an endless arena. The game also features a built-in loot filter so that you can easily filter out items that you don't want to see, much like you're used to with Path of Exile. That's a nice touch. The work they've done on the game so far is great, but it's not quite finished. Recently, the game has received mostly positive reviews, down from its all-time rating of very positive. Most of the reviews are great, but the ones that aren't seem to be focused around the number of bugs still in the game. If you're burned out on the current ARPGs, definitely give this one a go. Before we hit the next game on the list, have you ever played a game and wished the developers would have handled it differently? You don't have to wish anymore. That's where Core comes in, the sponsor of today's video. Core is a platform where you'll find all sorts of games to play and worlds to explore. It's free to download, free to play, and free to create, and it's available in the Epic Game Store. It's a game construction kit and a game playing destination all in one. Their goal is to empower anyone and everyone to be a game creator. If you've ever had an idea, Core is the perfect place to turn that idea into a reality. Currently, Core has over 50,000 games in all different genres, and now it has a brand new avatar designer to express yourself by choosing what every part of your character looks like. One amazing example of what can be made in Core is Primal World. You can adventure through a beautiful multiplayer RPG with your own companion. You'll fight against the ancients, complete puzzles and quests, and find hidden treasure. I love that it's got classic RPG mechanics like using materials to upgrade my equipment. It's great for playing alone, but I couldn't believe you could also play it with friends if you want to. Use the link in the description to play Primal World right now by downloading Core for free. Thanks for listening, and now let's get back to the video. Grim Dawn, released in 2016 on PC and Xbox. Grim Dawn was developed and published by Crate Entertainment and has successfully made a pretty good name for itself in the ARPG community. The game takes place in Karn, a dark, war-torn world where a once-proud empire has been brought to ruin and the human race driven to the edge of extinction. While some of the games on this list will let you choose one class, Grim Dawn is going to let you choose 2 different classes and combine them. Combine that with the fact that you can also invest in constellations for more passives for your character, and you get a game that lets you play through it 20 times with a different build each time. Grim Dawn sits at a very positive rating on Steam recently and since its release. The combat in this game feels good, and it's a great take on the genre. Grim Dawn released an expansion in 2017 and 2019 and has sold over 7 million copies so far, making it one of the most successful ARPGs around. Check this one out for something more old school than Diablo 3, but less complicated than Path of Exile. Torchlight 2 and Torchlight 3, PC, Mac, Linux, Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox. I'm going to combine these two because they are very similar. Torchlight 2 features randomly generated dungeons to explore and a ton of different types of monsters to fight. The game features 4 playable classes, each with 3 skills. Torchlight features a noticeably more cartoony art style than most of the games on this list, which was something that made it hard for me to get into, coming off the heels of the gritty ARPGs of old. Torchlight 2 and 3 were both developed by Runic Games and look and feel a lot alike. However, Torchlight 2 was much better received by its fans and much better supported by its developers than its successor Torchlight 3. After being released in 2020, 1 year later in 2021, Torchlight 3 developers announced that it would no longer be supporting Torchlight 3. Torchlight 3 did suffer from a lot of changes in the course of its development, starting out at first as an MMO before the developers realized their fans wanted an ARPG. In the end, the final product wasn't received especially well. If we look at the Steam reviews for Torchlight 2, we can see that it's been very positively reviewed, both recently and for all time. If we compare that to Torchlight 3, we can see it's received mixed reviews on both fronts. I still think both of these games are pretty decent entries into the genre, especially if you're looking for an ARPG with a more cartoony art style, but in an unusual twist, I'd probably recommend trying Torchlight 2 over its successor, Torchlight 3. Wolcen 2020 PC. Wolcen was a highly anticipated ARPG that launched with a lot of hype for everyone to realize that it was riddled with bugs. The game looked stunning, but it lacked balance and it was sort of missing a compelling endgame. Combat feels pretty good and the sound design is amazing. It had a fairly unique take on the passive skill tree. You have wheels that you can rotate to align any inner and outer ring passives that your heart desires. Here we are about 2 years later, and how's it doing now? It's continuing to get improvements and the developers are releasing monthly updates on the continued development of the game. Development does look slow, however. The game is a great time on your first playthrough, but it doesn't seem to quite have the same replayability that some of the other ARPGs on this list have. It is worth noting that reviews are sitting at mixed recently. Not great for a game that had a ton of hype around its launch. Still, if you're looking for a new take on the genre with gorgeous graphics, maybe give this one a try. Diablo 2 Resurrected 2021, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Diablo 2 initially released in 2000. Diablo 2 was also the first ARPG I ever played and would set the bar high for all ARPGs that would follow. When the remastered Diablo 2 Resurrected was released in 2021, I was both thrilled and relieved to see that Blizzard didn't repeat the mistakes of Warcraft 3 Reforged. In fact, Diablo 2 Resurrected was an amazing improvement over the original. Granted, the launch was a bit of a buggy mess, and my character at one point did get rolled back 13 levels. Yeah, that sucked, but that's all been sorted out now, and they even have continued supporting the game after launch by adding a ladder, leagues, and rebalancing skills. It's breathed new life into the game and the community all over again. Respecs are limited in Diablo 2, which means a lot of the replayability comes from wanting to try different builds. Diablo 2 is known for its dark and gritty feel and its incredibly rare items, many of which players will never see in an entire lifetime of playing the game, unless they trade for them. But when you do get one of these ultra rare items, it's a feeling that's unmatched in almost any genre. If you're a fan of ARPGs, you almost owe it to yourself to see where it all began. Technically, there is a Diablo 1, and while that game is fun, time has not been kind to it. Maybe someday we'll see a remaster of Diablo 1, but until then, I definitely recommend Diablo 2 Resurrected. Diablo 3 2012, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and Mac. Diablo 3 was released to massive success. It broke all of Blizzard's pre-order records. But once the launch dust settled, players weren't 100% happy with some of the decisions Blizzard had made with the game. Probably most contentious was that at launch the game had an auction house, which in itself was a new feature for the franchise. But more importantly, that auction house also had a real-world cash auction house sitting inside of it so that players could purchase and sell items to each other for real money in-game. Blizzard claimed that this was to reduce the use of sketchy third-party item sell sites, but of course, in their generous benevolence, they would be kindly taking a cut of every transaction that occurred within the game. Well, the community didn't like that, and after a lot of very loud feedback on the issue, Blizzard would end up removing the auction house altogether, as players had also discovered that the best way to improve your character was simply to stand at the auction house and flip items. This was exponentially faster than farming them for yourself. The auction house had quite literally disincentivized playing the game. With the expansion Reaper of Souls, the game had become incredibly well liked. Many of the problems at launch had been addressed, and while the game was not exactly what longtime fans had hoped for, it was still a solid entry into the series. It also had that Blizzard level polish, you know it when you feel it. The combat is just silky smooth, which is not always the case with these games in the genre. If you haven't played Diablo 3 or if you've never played an ARPG before and you want to get started, Diablo 3 is a great way to get acquainted with the genre, as it's fairly simple, attractive, and easy to play. It's also still getting updates every few months with new leagues and new league mechanics, which keeps the community coming back. Last, but definitely not least, Path of Exile, 2013, PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Mac. Path of Exile is often described as the true successor of Diablo 2. It's the Diablo 3 that the Diablo 2 fans wanted but did not receive. Path of Exile is definitely the most well-supported and maintained on the list, receiving massive new leagues added to the game every 3 to 4 months. Remember how I said Diablo 3 had leagues every few months? It does, but they are nowhere near the size and scope of the leagues that are added to the game for Path of Exile every few months. As a result, it also has far and away the highest concurrent player count of any of these games. Lead game designer Chris Wolcen says that there's on average 70 or 80,000 people playing the game at any moment. If you are a fan of ARPGs and you somehow haven't given Path of Exile a go, this is one I'd put right at the top of the list. It's free to play, so you have nothing to lose, and it allows for more build diversity than just about any other ARPG out there. Where the game really separates itself from the competition is in the endgame loop, where many of the ARPGs on this list will be fun to play through once or twice. Path of Exile's mapping system and insane number of late game bosses makes coming back to this game every league easy to do. Path of Exile's biggest strength and weakness are the same: its complexity. The game has an incredibly deep crafting system, a massive skill augmenting system, and the largest passive tree I've ever seen in a game. Players trying the game out for the first time will generally have a love it or hate it relationship with these systems, as they'll either love the control it gives them over their character or they'll hate how overwhelmed they feel when they first start. Not surprisingly, Steam reviews are very positive now and since its release. If you're okay with not being able to master a game in under a week and are willing to have fun with it until you do, you might love Path of Exile. Now, the next two games aren't out yet, but it looks like both are going to come out around the corner in 2023. Be on the lookout for more dedicated videos for these games, as I'll definitely try to cover them as we approach their release. The first one is Diablo 4, PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. Diablo 4 is trying to return to the dark and gritty feel of Diablo 2. The game looks amazing so far and takes place mere decades after Diablo 3. The zones in Diablo 4 are about 10 to 20 times bigger than the Diablo 3 zones. They've mentioned they already have over 150 dungeons in the game so far, so it sounds like the game is going to be absolutely massive compared to the previous entries. You can level sync with friends, which actually sounds pretty interesting. ARPGs typically have so much power creep and it happens so fast that even if your friend's only a day behind you, the only thing they can do is try to pick up the loot that's in your wake as you delete everything. Somehow the loot that drops will also be scaled so that both people are receiving loot that they need. It's a cool idea for sure, but I do have concerns with dynamically scaling the content this way. Diablo 4 is going to launch with the Barbarian, Druid, Necromancer, Rogue, and Sorcerer. It's worth pointing out that the fan favorite Paladin is missing. Perhaps Blizzard is saving it to hype up that first expansion. Everybody gets a dash ability while they're playing, which always feels amazing in the genre. Interestingly, Diablo 4 will feature mounts for the first time in the franchise, and you'll be able to hang trophies on the mount to provide further stat bonuses. Diablo 4 will have PvP and a PvP zone. Remember how I said the auction house in Diablo 3 disincentivized people from playing the game? So now the plan in Diablo 4 is to make it so that the best items in the game cannot be traded, and the second best can only be traded a finite number of times. This should allow them to make the drop rate on those upper echelon items low enough to be found by dedicated players without having to worry about flooding the economy or having bots ruin the market for the best items in the game, like you saw back in Diablo 2. Diablo 4 will feature enormous world bosses that will require you to team up with many other players to take them down. This is one of the more MMO-ish components being added to the game, and it's going to be interesting to see how these MMO-type components mesh with the Diablo franchise. It sounds like Diablo is also going to have collectibles to reward you for zone completion, and there's going to be a Paragon board, which kind of reminds me of the passive tree in Path of Exile. So Paragon is back, but in a much more interesting form than in Diablo 3. And that's the gist of what we know so far about Diablo 4, and here's hoping it turns out to be one of the best Diablos yet. Next, Path of Exile 2, PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Mac. Path of Exile 2 is another game I'm incredibly excited about. It is going to feature enhanced visuals and an entirely new 7-act campaign for players to play through, but it's also going to retain Path of Exile 1's campaign within it. Path of Exile 2 is going to take place 20 years after PoE 1. One of the larger changes is coming in the socket system. Path of Exile will now have a completely new socket system that looks a lot more intuitive and a lot less punishing than the old one. When you pick up a bow, you'll have a socket tree that you can fill out straight from the beginning. And if you find a new bow, you'll still have those same sockets available. Before, we tended to hoard our socket upgrade materials until we found the perfect item, since it was possible that the next mob might just drop something better than what we just found. But now it should be a lot easier to invest in and maintain them. Path of Exile 2 is also getting new weapons such as a spear and a crossbow, and it looks like they're going to be fantastic. The overhand spear abilities remind me a lot of Javazon builds from Diablo 2, and I love it. GGG has been pretty tight-lipped about PoE 2 as of late, and we don't have a ton of new information yet. One thing is for sure, both Diablo 4 and Path of Exile 2 are poised to be massive additions to the ARPG genre. And that is the list of the top ARPGs to play right now. Which one would you recommend others play? Let them know down in the comments below, and let me know if I missed one you think should have made the list. Be sure to hit the like button or subscribe so that Algorithm Senpai notices me. A massive thank you to my YouTube members for supporting the channel so I can continue to make good, honest content about the things I love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya in the next video. Also, don't forget to check out Primal World. You can play the game by using the link in the description to download core for free.